Okay, welcome to the third installment of the increasingly inaccurately named SDC, that is Solomon Davis Casey Address. By the way, I organized the letters that way because it was similar to SDG, which was Soli Deo Gloria, to God alone be the glory, which is an epitaph or whatever, not epitaph, but it was this surname or false name or whatever or alias that Johann Sebastian Bach and I believe a number of other composers of Baroque and classical music and things, they would sign their works with Soli Deo Gloria. So such as glory, huh? So the reason I'm making us think about this is just about the first person, it seems, that started watching this address once I put it up on YouTube, sent me a message and they're like, hey, what about Ross Peterson? What about Douglas Cottrell? And I was like, what? So I go look them up, both of those, and they're kind of related because they knew each other, and oh my God. Yeah. So, two more true channeling psychics, true channels for the source. Just unbelievable. Now I'm just starting to learn about Ross Peterson. By the way, I think I want to talk today and just in general about why people don't know about these guys, but also about, and a related and probably important part of that is why it's taken me so long to find out about all of them when I was interested in the phenomenon and looking for them and hoping to find other ones. I've known about Casey since like 96 or something. Didn't discover anyone else until this year. Wow. So, Ross Peterson. I've got his biography on order. It's out of print, so I ordered it used somewhere, and I'll give you more details later, probably about both of these guys. But Ross Peterson was giving readings. I'm not sure when he started or when he died or whatever. It's 60s, 70s, maybe 80s. But he apparently met Douglas Cottrell in the 70s, because Douglas Cottrell, because his daughter was having health problems and stuff, and I guess for a number of reasons, wanted to develop his own psychic gift. Or no, I think he got a reading. That's right, from Ross Peterson, and in that reading, it was mentioned that Douglas Cottrell could develop his ability to do the same thing, to be a channel, to access the Akashic records. And apparently both of these guys are interesting in that they didn't just start spewing out readings, with little or no provocation. They apparently were working at it. I think Ross Peterson had this goal where he wanted to develop this ability, and so he really worked at it with the meditation and things, and but with a focus of trying to be a channel like this and to access the Akashic records. I'm trying to be careful how I say this. I'm not sure 100% how everything works, of course, because I'm always learning. But yeah, that general type of thing, the type of thing Casey was doing, and the others. So they both were apparently successful at developing their own ability to channel. Now, Ross Peterson, it seems like, from what I've seen so far, I've only found like 8 readings online that somebody has posted on Google Video. And they've got audio recordings of the readings. And my gosh, his delivery, as far as how clear the English is, and I always laud Paul Solomon for his clarity and everything, and justly so. But boy, Ross Peterson had like no accent. Was I think what it boils down to is it's not just about having this Midwestern newscaster type accent. It's that, well, maybe it's because I have that kind of accent, but to me, the people that have a kind of vanilla American accent, so no detectable accent to someone like me, the ability to express, to emote, is a lot better, and there's so much more that comes across with the inflection and the change of tone of voice and all this stuff. And boy, Ross Peterson was really like that, unbelievably expressive and so clear, the message that was coming through. Kind of spooky sounding when you listen to them. It's really cool, actually. But as far as the content, just dead on, unbelievable, mind expanding. Of course, it jives with all the rest of these guys. But Ross Peterson, I don't know how many of his other readings were recorded or transcribed. Not even sure exactly how many he gave. So that's still an area of open exploration for me. And then, so Douglas James Cottrell, the miraculous part about him is that he's still alive and he's still giving readings. I kept getting the sense when I found Paul Solomon, I'm like, wow, just missed him. It's a lot closer to my time than Edgar Casey. His life actually overlapped my own quite a bit. So I was like, getting the sense that, wow, as I keep finding these people, I'm eventually going to find one that's still alive, and wow, here we go. He's still out there, in apparently good health and in his 60s, I guess. I'm not sure exactly. Don't quote me on that, but I believe so. And giving readings in London, Ontario. So, of course, first thing I did is book a session, for a reading. And to me, the $550 is nothing. I mean, I completely understand why they have to charge what some people might consider exorbitant amounts of money, because this guy would otherwise just be swamped. And apparently, like a lot of these others, Douglas Cottrell started out just giving readings willy-nilly for everybody, and just got completely inundated with all these requests for readings. And he apparently had a vision in which Edgar Casey, the spirit of Edgar Casey or something, was telling him, don't wear yourself out. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't drive yourself to the grave by overextending yourself and draining your body and depriving it of the recuperation it needs in between readings. So I guess the message was be responsible and use this ability sparingly so you don't burn yourself out. So it seems that he's done that, and that's given Douglas Cottrell the ability to do this for decades, and he's still going. And apparently he's got 25,000 readings. Now I heard one place where that was just health-related readings, or I don't know if that's just all readings, or where that figure comes from. But far and away more than Casey's 14,000, Paul Solomon's 9,000. Not sure how many Ross Peterson allegedly gave. But by the way, one of the things I definitely plan on asking, I hope I don't run out of time. I've got this humongous list of questions, of course. I keep trying to pare it down and sort it in order of priority so that, in case the only first couple questions get answered, that I have the right ones at the top. But one of the things I definitely want to ask is, what nobody else seems to have asked, which drives me crazy, is how many other channels are there? How many are still alive and giving readings? How many are in the near future likely to start giving readings? And, can you give their names? Can you give any information necessary to contact them if that's permitted? And then how many have there been in the past that have left recorded readings that we can access? Just a simple question like that should be an answer easily obtainable by the source. Of course. So I really look forward to that, because that's, like I said, one of the things I really want to address today. So that's one of the issues that frustrates me the most, is in general how almost everyone in the world seems to be completely oblivious to these guys. They don't realize that there's psychics and then there's psychics, that there's TV, let's have a seance and access somebody's dead mother kind of psychics on Larry King. And then there's the real deal, something that's really meaty and substantial, and these there are people out there that are giving readings that are, like I said before, they're coherent and they cover just a whole limitless array of topics at such depth that's impossible for us to know right now. And they all agree, it's not like they're just babbling nonsense. And it's all like so compelling and arresting, it really captures your attention when you hear it, and it's all like, it produces lots of more introspection and thought and conjecture, and it really gets the mind going and spurs us to action. At least me. That's the thing. I keep looking around. It's like, where are the people doing these experiments? They're like implementing these devices and these technologies outlined in the readings. It's like you just don't see it. And I remember reading a few readings from Casey where some guys were like trying to implement a perpetual motion machine or something, and Morton Blumenthal had lots of curious questions, and apparently was involved in building some things. But where are the results? What we need is to have some drastic technological advances in medicine and in energy, or just you name it. But somewhere have some drastic technological advance by one person, or a group of people that can stand up and say, this wasn't our idea. This idea came from Casey, or this idea came from Ross Peterson, or Douglas Cottrell, or Andrew Jackson Davis, or Paul Solomon, or God knows who else, but one of these channels, that this information came from a channel that has lots and lots more information out there that people should be paying attention to. It's, we need something real, some real tangible results that can draw people's attention to this and make them realize that it is valuable. It is the real deal. It's not just a bunch of crap. And that's the whole issue, I guess this gets back to Andrew Jackson Davis. As an aside, I noticed a few particulars again that are discrepancies between he and the others. He seems to insist that there was no Immaculate Conception, and Casey and Douglas Cottrell, Ross Peterson, all the others, from what I've read, they really seem to clearly indicate that yes, Jesus was immaculately conceived. as was Mary, born of Anna. So my initial take on that, the discrepancy, is that perhaps Andrew Jackson Davis was not as clear of a channel, or meaning perhaps he wasn't clearly accessing the Akashic records all the time, or maybe there were things interfering, maybe things were edited later. I have no idea. All we've got is these books, and we don't have tape recordings or even transcriptions of the readings, so it's hard to tell. But still, maybe we have to separate him out or something, but still, he's got some really terrific things to say about this whole phenomenon of people not being receptive to information outside of their little box, so to speak. If you're a mainstream scientist who doesn't care much for religion, you've got your own religion, your own box, which is the dogma of mainstream science. And I don't want to fall off the deep end like some kind of alternative science or an alternative history guy where it's all bunk and it's all conspiracy theory and stuff. There's a lot of crap out there in the alternative science community. I realize that. I realize there's a lot of bullshit. And there's a lot less bullshit in mainstream science, which is why I chose the route of mainstream science for my career, at least for now. But still, the mainstream scientist is, whether he knows it or not, is really still a victim of dogma. There are some basic tenets of mainstream science that appear to be patently false. I mean, one of the main ones that comes to mind is the theory of gradualism in geology, where I think it was in the 1800s, the whole field of geology kind of coalesced around this idea that all geological changes, all rock formations, and the face of the earth was basically something that only altered very slowly. These were things that occurred very slowly, very gradually over time. No large-scale, abrupt, cataclysmic changes that would result in changing the face of the entire earth or global floods or anything like that. No cataclysms. And that appears to be patently false. I just say that because of the consistent messages about the upcoming Earth changes. I mean, heck, that's what got me onto this thing in the first place, was the whole thing about crustal displacement. Graham Hancock's book, The Fingerprints of the Gods, that's what it's about. I mean, not just about crustal displacement, but about the obvious connection between ancient civilizations, how the similarities in architecture and design and things clearly indicate that they were connected, and he goes on and on and on to dig up more and more evidence about things and this prehistoric culture, and along the way there's all this evidence of this cataclysm that really changed the face of the earth, that changed the position of the poles, and I'm not talking about the magnetic poles just switching, and changing the position of the rotational axis of the earth relative to the crust, so that the rotational North Pole would be somewhere else. That kind of crustal displacement. So that'll be, of course, a topic for a future address, will be the Earth changes kind of thing. But lots of other areas, and we kind of know this in science. I mean, you see that again and again, and in the scientific community, they know it, and they talk about it. It's something my PI and I would discuss quite a bit. How somebody will make a discovery, and whether they made a huge discovery or not, people will tend to line up behind what they consider big names and influential names in the field. And so you get people lining up behind certain theories that really are just theories, and they have often no more experimental evidence to back them than 100 other theories that are radically different. But it's a matter of support. It's a matter of groupthink, herd mentality, same types of things you see in religion. That's why I use the word dogma. It seems to be the same type of phenomena. And of course, then you have this transgenerational thing where once kids, you know, my daddy was a scientist and he like believed this and all of his buddies believed it and everybody now believes it. You know, it kind of gives it more ethos. It makes it more of a sure thing in the minds of individuals that this or that particular theory is correct. Same thing you see with mainstream science. Same thing you see with religion. So I guess I can kind of understand why it is difficult for people to think outside the box. You know, obviously there are people that do think outside the box all the time, and that's great. Thank God there are. We would get nowhere. The Star Trek episode "The Apple" comes to mind. You know, where there's this whole civilization of people that all they do is they service some machine and they live like primitive natives and they just gather fruit all the time. They've lived that way for countless millennia. You know, and Dr. McCoy keeps going, these people are going nowhere. They're not progressing. They're stagnating. And it's like, yes, the virtues of Star Trek. If that's where we would be, you know, if it wasn't for people thinking outside the box and bucking the trend and saying, yeah, everybody's full of it and going their own way. And that's free will. That's bicameral man, and that can lead to as much or more error than the group think. So, not necessarily a virtue, but I guess the fact that we have both is a virtue. But it creates a problem, because when you do have people who stumble upon the truth, or in the case of these channeling psychics, people who are able to access entities in higher dimensions that can clearly, much more clearly than we do anyway, see the truth. Or what I mean is see the true nature of the reality concerning this earth, of its origins, of the larger reality surrounding this earth and the life on this earth and the other forces, the larger forces that affect it. The wisdom to see all the detailed information necessary to make these future predictions. And from what I see, that's what they really are. They're looking at the boulder rolling down the hill and saying, yes, it's going to hit the village below. And to a much more complicated degree, looking at all the inner workings of the planet, of the earth, and being able to just by understanding all the forces, the mechanics, and how things necessarily must play out according to the true laws of physics, what will happen and in what time frame. And of course, the closer we get to those events, the more accurate those and refined those predictions can be. So with Edgar Cayce, he makes statements like 98. And they ask, when is this going to occur? And he says, we'll begin to understand more fully in 98 and all this stuff. But still very vague predictions, and the source even said, that's all they could be at that point. And then, 98 came and went, and everybody's like, just full of it, completely write him off. But now you get, and even Paul Solomon, he seemed, for whatever reason, the source, those delivering the information through Paul Solomon seemed reticent to really give specifics about these coming Earth changes, in a way. Unless there's more that I haven't run across yet. Again, the frustrating thing is there's still only a few. Thankfully, Volume 1 is the latest batch of readings, but still only a few of all the readings he ever gave, so we're not really sure, but and even through these other sources, everything that was given. But man, with Douglas Cottrell, the information about coming Earth changes is much, much more specific. I mean, I just got the CD or the download about the coming changes between now and 2012, and two different CDs, and they were each readings that were given this year in 2009. So very up to date and much more precise dates and precise information and things. Really fascinating stuff, by the way. I'm not sure how much I'm authorized to spill on the internet, so I'll just encourage you to go to, I think it's DouglasCottrell.com, or just Google Douglas Cottrell readings or Douglas Cottrell psychic or Douglas James Cottrell, Cattrell. and you'll find his site. They've got a nice website up there, and a bunch of videos posted by Ramsden Regolin, a guy that seems apparently to be really interested in this stuff and on the ball, and perhaps some degree of coordination between him and the Cottrells, because they've got, when you go to the YouTube videos section of the Cottrell website, it goes to all these videos that apparently were put up by Ramsden Regolin. That's the guy's Google username. But and those are really helpful. Lots of segments from lots of different readings on lots of different topics, and I'm only I think a fourth or a third of the way through those. I'm working back. But getting back to the topic, what I find so frustrating is the fact that even for someone like me who has known about and has, I've not had a problem believing in the veracity of a channeling psychic for years, since like 98, 97. So definitely I've been very receptive to the idea of there being other channeling psychics, very interested to know if there were more. I guess you could question how hard I was looking. I did several Wikipedia searches on psychics and reading up on them, and that's the kind of thing that frustrates me. I guess I rely too heavily on Wikipedia because it's become so powerful, because you have everybody on the planet that may know something about a topic. They can post stuff up there, and that's tremendously powerful and gives you a lot of information fast that is cropped up there that's valid, and some crap that eventually gets edited out by people as they discover it. But I guess the illusion that you get with Google searches and with especially with Wikipedia is that you've comprehensively searched the topic, and so if it's not there, it doesn't exist. Star Wars Episode 1, if it's not in our records, the file doesn't exist, or I guess that's Episode 2 or whatever. You probably will not find me quoting the Episode 1, 2, or 3 of Star Wars, George Lucas. Yeah, I guess we'll have another episode about the topic of inspired science fiction. But, so that was my shortcoming, I guess, to a degree. But again, to a certain degree, my hands are tied. And it is kind of shocking when you search for Ross Peterson psychic or Ross Peterson readings, with or without quotes around any number of words in the phrase, you find very little information out there. Thankfully, Douglas Cottrell has his website, and there seems to be quite a bit out there about him. But the cross-pollination seems to be all wrong. It's like every article that I read about Paul Solomon or any one of these guys, there should be references to all the others. And thankfully in the Paul Solomon article, someone had the presence of mind to link him to Edgar Casey, which of course I already knew about, and Andrew Jackson Davis. But if people will allow it, that kind of thing needs to get up there. Like in the Edgar Casey article, we need to put a note somewhere in there that other psychics that in the similar vein of Casey, similar to Casey, that way you prevent people from putting up every kind of channeling medium that's there. That's the other. See, in the article on channeling mediums, there's a whole list of them, and that's great, but these people aren't in that list, or at least Edgar Casey was, but nobody else was. So I put Andrew Jackson Davis and Paul Solomon in that list. And I hope Ross Peterson and Douglas Cottrell were not in that list, because if they were, that means I missed them. But if they're not, they need to be. But I think there needs to be another article even in Wikipedia about this type of channeling psychic that contacts a source that is kind of a vanilla generic source. They're not just contacting one disembodied spirit or entity or something, that they tap into the Akashic records. And maybe that should be the criteria. Maybe they should be called Akashic psychics or something, as in channeling psychics capable of tapping into the Akashic records. that might be a thorny definition, but something like that. There needs to be an article where, so that yet a to-do list. Maybe I'll try to get something like that started. I don't know. But at the very least, there needs to be cross-references in every single one of these. We need a good article about Douglas Cottrell. Maybe there was one, and maybe they had it removed because they don't want too much publicity. I'm not sure. I'll look into that too. And we need to have one about Ross Peterson. Once I read his book, I'll try to make one. I've been waiting until I have enough information to really write an article. But then all these articles need to refer to each other. And I think it also, of course, helps to have websites, and thankfully some people have some personal websites up about Ross Peterson and the others, because that's the only other recourse. If it's not in Wikipedia, if it's not in the common watering hole, then you're left with whatever other people have posted just on their own sites on the internet, and then you hope that Google finds it. So, enough of my soapbox rant. But so that's been very interesting to me, is how it was so difficult for me to come upon these people. It almost seems like I had to be inspired to even find them. I don't know, maybe there's some kind of mystery school, clandestine, deliberate attempt to prevent the pearls from being given to swine, or whatever the expression is. I don't know. To me, that's not right. To me, this stuff should be as public as possible. Everyone and their dog should know about all of these people, so that he who has ears can hear. Obviously, 90% of people, or 75 or 50 or whatever, are just going to consider it complete garbage and are just going to laugh it off, ridicule it, whatever. But at least if the word is out, then the people that will be receptive to it, then everyone that would be receptive to it, if they heard about it, will have the chance. That's what frustrates me, is to think that there are countless thousands or millions of people out there that, if they heard this stuff, if they heard about these guys, they would start reading the readings, they would start paying attention and gleaning valuable things from them. But they're not, because they just don't know about them. Because here's me. If there's me, there's 100,000 like me, right? That's very interested in this stuff. But it was so difficult for me to even find out about them. So I guess that's one of the reasons I'm trying to do this address, and I'm going to try to flesh out the website for SDG and just have links to all these people and brief biography and everything. And every time I find more, to keep cataloging them, so that everyone can access all available information from these sources, from the Akashic records. Until that day when we have these mechanical devices, apparently, that are apparently feasible to build, through which we can just access the Akashic records directly. Google Maps, Google Video, Google Akasha, or something. Oh my gosh. Yeah, Microsoft, with Bing, you want to compete with Google, there's your secret. Tap into the Akashic records. Yeah, I should start up a internet company. Oh wait, we have to develop the technology to access the records first. But no, that's something that, said again and again, is definitely possible. We're so used to thinking spiritual technology, psychic and religion, and then science and concrete engineering and things like that. But apparently, yes, definitely possible to bridge the gap, to develop devices that we can use that any person then could use, apparently, to access the Akashic records, and which means access all information about everything that has ever transpired anywhere in the universe, I guess. Wow. So that would be great. And I'm sure, apparently, it seems anyway, that more and more people are being able to and will be able to channel. And that will be nice. If that just becomes a profession, the channeling psychic. starts to sound like Dune, you know, where we have mentats and stuff, and Bene Gesserit, and everybody is like trained to be some kind of computer or machine with their mind, you know. Yeah, boy. Here we go. Inspired science fiction. Not that these readings are science fiction. I mean, the science fiction was inspired. Oh my gosh, what a can of worms. So, yeah, frustrating that it was so hard for me to find out about these, and hopefully that will be it. So again, in case you missed it, possibly Andrew Jackson Davis, but definitely it seems the rest of these guys, in order: Edgar Casey, Ross Peterson, Paul Solomon, Douglas James Cottrell, and question mark, who will we find next? Those are the ones I know about for now. And no, I'm not going to rename the series the SDC RD or RC. No, that's it. Okay. What it was called initially is what it was called. It's going to be the increasingly inaccurately named SDC Address and SDC website. So be it. But rest assured, and in my forum, I'm going to have a separate, we'll have a separate forum for each one of these guys, and then a general one, of course. And as we find more, we'll just keep adding them. So, I think I touched upon the main topic I wanted to touch on today. I guess one thing I did want to discuss, just want to make sure I haven't left anything out. So I will have more information about these guys as I find out more. And since now I'm able apparently to book readings and get them, get readings, answers to questions, my gosh, that's just, for me, I'm sure almost nobody watching this knows really my background or my involvement with this. So what the hell, I'll give you a brief synopsis. Me personally, I discovered Casey in 96, 97, because Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods led me to Casey. There's just a brief reference to the ARE in his book, but that was enough. And around the same time, I was reading things in the news about aging research, and it kind of dawned on me at that time, since they had gotten some model organisms like fruit flies and things to live drastically longer, it finally dawned on me, wow, we can really intervene in the aging process, and it's not really true, this Christian view that everyone's age is set in stone. And, yet another piece of erroneous information everybody's been blindly adhering to for centuries or millennia. So I was like, wow, hey, how can we intervene in this? What could we really help people live longer, live healthier, longer? And so the readings in the Casey readings that had to do with that really caught my attention. And he's got a reading, I think it's number 405, on the Firestone, in which he describes the crystal in Atlantis being used to burn away the impurities that cause aging. Basically, I think his wording was a little more vague than that. And after years of stumbling around in the dark and finally coming back to that and putting things together and talking it over with a friend of mine, I finally came to the conclusion that what he was talking about was a solar-pumped infrared laser being used to burn lipofuscin deposits in cells. And I've steered my career towards biology. I was going to go for a PhD, and so far I've just got a master's degree in pharmacology and toxicology, so I've gotten a lot more exposure to biology than I had as a computer science major. That's what my bachelor's was in. But, so I guess you have to kind of pick which aging theories you find most compelling, and the one I found most compelling was the one by Ulf Brunk and Terman and Kurtz, and they talk about lipofuscin, which is age pigment that accumulates in long-lived cells that don't dilute themselves by dividing all the time. They accumulate this aging pigment, and it's really prevalent in really old animals and people and things. And so their theory is that if the aging pigment itself is causing problems, and if you can get rid of it, then you can help things. So it seemed to be possibly that was what Casey was talking about. Now keep in mind, as I've listened to more of these readings by Douglas Cottrell and things, and the information by Paul Solomon, it appears that if that is what was being done, and if that theory holds any water, still the lipofuscin is just a downstream effect. It's still a symptom, and you would just be treating a symptom if you were treating that. And of course you always want to treat the cause. It seems clear, especially from the Douglas Cottrell readings, that the cause of aging is that every cell, which is a kind of a sentient organism in and of itself, has a rate of vibration. It's kind of as a life force or something. And he even said that every cell has a filament, which could be, I guess, an actin fiber or something, part of the cytoskeleton, apparently some type of unique fiber that stretches across the whole cell or something. I'm not sure, or it could be just in the nucleus. Something I might get more details about soon. But every cell apparently has a filament that vibrates at a certain frequency, and that rate of vibration slowly declines as time passes, and that happens overall in the entire system. And once the rate of vibration of enough cells drops below a certain threshold, you die of natural causes, basically that kind of thing. And according to Douglas Cottrell, if everyone was completely healthy and free from stress and fear, they would live to be about 120 to 140 years on average, and then die of natural causes due to this declining rate of vibration. And what he keeps saying again and again is that the Atlanteans, and in the past, had means of bringing this rate of vibration back up to youthful levels, and greatly extending life for hundreds of years. Okay, fine. I'll briefly talk about Methuselah. Apparently Methuselah is bunk, where Methuselah lived 969 years. The Cottrell readings, or maybe it was Ross Peterson, I'm not sure, clearly said that they measured time differently then, and so 10 of their years would be one of our years. So really, Methuselah only lived into his 90s. End of discussion. So apparently the take-home message is, yes, there were people that lived hundreds of years, but no, he wasn't, and those people mentioned in the Old Testament weren't those people, or something. I don't know. Anyway, I completely rabbit trailing here, but just wanted to share a little bit about myself. So what I've been doing is trying to, before I discovered these other guys, all I had was basically that reading from Casey, and there's this other reading where they ask, why do we age? And he said, because you expect to. I'm like, it doesn't help me, But I can kind of see it. When you understand the control of the mind, and how the mind creates reality for itself, and how these readings again and again say that if we had reached that connection with our source, reached enlightenment, we could continually rejuvenate ourselves. We hardly need any food, or wouldn't need any food. We just get all of our nourishment and sustenance directly from the life force, from the energy of God that's continually flooding us all. Which would be nice, but until then, what else can we do, So apparently there were these other technologies to do that for people that, for whatever reason, were not at that point. And so for the longest time, I was just going by what Casey had to say, which wasn't much. And because at first I was looking at gamma radiation, because I thought that was the only type of radiation that could penetrate clear through a body. So that's where I was looking, and that was kind of a rabbit trail that kind of petered out. I did actually got to the point where I was doing some experiments with the C. elegans worms, and it didn't seem to help them that much. And then turned out to be a lot of literature dealing with the effects of radiation, even in the dose schedules that I thought would be optimal in mice and things. And it was basically found that you could get a hormetic effect with low-dose radiation, or periodic low-dose radiation, where you can kind of stimulate the cell and help the animals live healthier a little bit longer. But as far as the maximum lifespan, you still weren't addressing that major issue. Just the average lifespan in a group would go up. And that's what I'm really interested in, of course, is the real deal, this maximal lifespan thing. So I went back, like I said, and kind of arrived at the fact that they were talking about apparently infrared. There were some important clues where he's talking about energy, like heat energy, burning energy, and heat rays are infrared rays, black body radiation, infrared radiation, and something a lot of people don't clearly understand is that from something burning or like a hot, like in your oven, the coils that are really hot, you get a lot of infrared radiations coming off of them. That really is radiation. Really, just like light, it is light. It's just beyond or below our level of the range that we perceive visible light in. Wow, this is turning into a science video. Who'da thunk, huh? So I don't want to belabor that. That was my pet theory, my particular interpretation of what it meant, and I've begun experiments on it. And my experiments weren't based solely on that, and I couldn't get support in the scientific community to even begin experiments without basis in the literature. And thankfully there is a lot. There's a technique called selective photothermolysis where they use pulsed lasers to selectively destroy pigmented targets, just like lipofuscin. So that's what I'm trying right now, some crude experiments, just beginning them to deal with that. And I have a blog where you can follow that research if you want. It's, oh boy, hope I get it right. What the heck, I'll get the right URL here for you. I guess I'll try to get more interlinking in my site. Links on all my various pages to all my other pages, so it's easier to find the other things I'm involved in. But if you want to follow my research, my current experiments, it's nasonschooler.com /research/blog. And Firefox can't find it. I'm assuming that's just because the internet is down, not because I made a bogus bookmark. Anyway, yeah, that's the valid address, and you can kind of follow where I'm going. But so I definitely plan on asking about that. That's probably one of the first questions that's really been burning in my mind is, was my interpretation correct of what this reading was outlining? Was this really the mechanism by which the Atlanteans were rejuvenating using this technique? Because from the other readings I've read from Cottrell and Paul Solomon, it seems that wasn't necessarily the technique they were using, or maybe it was only part of it, or one of a couple, 2 or 3 different techniques that were used. Because it really seems that there are ways that you can expose cells to rates of vibration, whether that means a certain color of light or frequency range, or whether that means certain frequencies of sound. Apparently both can be used to bring that rate of vibration of the cells back up. Rejuvenation in truth. So that's really the Holy Grail, and that's really what I'm interested in, I think. So I've got all this momentum in this one area, so I still have interest in my pet theory, and I will ask about that. But I guess my more specific interest is going to be, let's do the real thing. Let's do the most effective thing, and how can we detect this rate of vibration in cells so that we can tell we're affecting it? I guess essentially that's all I really need to know, because the rest I can do myself. And whatever other information the source will give, it'll help. It'll save me time. But you see that in the Edgar Casey readings, and I'm sure these others, if there are others, where you have scientists involved. He seems to go only so far, and then the source will say, "Go research it. Go look into it yourself. We're not here to spoon feed you every single answer." Which is good, that would be no fun if we just sat here and all scientific progress came from these channeling psychics, So perhaps I've said too much. Perhaps there's some reason why I shouldn't be talking about that, but that is what I plan to do. I do have a reading scheduled, and I'll share whatever answers I get back on these various topics as I get them. and as I can afford it, and as he's available, I plan on getting more readings, and that will really help, I think, with this series. To get some feedback from the source about how we can best get the most people, the most exposure to all these different sources, and kind of catalog them and get all the information together so it's easy to access. Yeah, boy, wouldn't that be a dream come true? Have like a online database like PubMed or something where it's for all this psychic information, where you have all the Casey readings, all the Davis readings, Ross Peterson, Douglas Cottrell, all of the information is considered readings from these sources in the database, available for full text searches and everything. Yeah. Some major hoops to jump through to get there, I'm sure. There's copyright issues, and everybody seems to have their own reason for holding on to their information. Thankfully, the ARE, they seem to have done the most complete job, probably because Casey's been dead for the longest. But like I said before, they've got all of his readings in a database that's searchable, and it's really nice. The question of access might be an important point, and the Casey source said several times not to cast pearls before swine. So to charge for these things, charge enough so that the people that would get the information would be the ones that were really interested in it, and not just people that were just going to use it for malicious purposes or just idle curiosity, whatever. The same reason by which for which Douglas Cottrell is charging a lot for the readings as well. He should. It's just a control thing, and that's not uncommon. Famous people that often get consulted for information, they have to start charging exorbitant amounts for their time. It's not that they need that to get rich at that point. Usually, it's just that it's the only way to ensure that when you do go before people and talk to them, they really are interested, and they really do have a good reason for talking to you, and you're not just wasting everybody's time. But it's unfortunate if there are people that are insanely poor and they can't. So I think that's the reason why they keep it down within reasonable levels, so that even us people of relatively meager incomes can still make it a priority and access these things. So let's see, in the last 7 minutes or so, what would be important to cover? I hope I covered all of that I wanted to on this topic. I guess at this point I'm just rambling about my goals for the future. But by any means, I don't want to stop anybody. If anybody wants to schedule a reading with Douglas Cottrell and ask some of these questions ahead of me, especially like questions about what other sources are there and things, go right ahead. I won't be offended. And if I find out about it before then, I won't waste his time. The more questions that get asked like that, the less questions somebody like me has to ask when we go there, and the more we can focus our inquiries, which is great. And as far as doing videos like this or putting up websites, by all means do. Let's get together, and if you want to coordinate efforts with me, sure, get in touch with me, and let's coordinate our efforts with getting this data available on the line, making sure everything is linked together well, and the sites are constructed well, and everything, and everything's laid out and planned well. And if people want to help, I know, for instance, the Paul Solomon Foundation, they need a lot of help right now. They've only got, apparently, Mary Shivan, or Shivan, however you pronounce her name, McGibbon, and her husband. They're, I believe, the only two main full-time volunteers that are working on getting his readings printed. And like I said, he's got, they've only got a small fraction. They've got volume 2 out of what's going to be volume 50 to 100, I believe, printed. And there's just so much work that needs to be done. So if you are motivated to help bring this stuff to light, they need volunteers, but also they need tithing. And that's, boy, I should have a whole other, I'm sure I will, have a whole other, maybe that's an effective thing for me to talk about in the last few minutes. But I probably will have a whole address just devoted to this whole prosperity thing. Because in a nutshell, no, this isn't your pastor at church just trying to squeeze more money out of his audience. And by the way, that thing just used to completely turn me off. Once a preacher goes up there and starts trying to squeeze his congregation for money, it's like, come on, If people will give, they will give. You don't have to squeeze them for it. And what kind of a gift is it if people have to be coerced and pinched to give their money? We get hung up on the fact that it's money, and I've, from a lot of these sources and the books they recommend, it's very clear that the money thing is related to just other forms of love and goodwill. And this is just a universal law. As you give, so you'll receive. The more you give of yourself, the more benefit and love that you receive, and good things you receive. And the same thing holds for money, because if you truly understand what money is, usually, like when I want a loaf of bread, it costs 50 cents. I pay 50 cents for a loaf of bread. What I was doing is expressing love for that loaf of bread, expressing gratitude, appreciation. So I demonstrate that. The tangible demonstration of that is the exchange of money. In that case, that's the proper use of money. It's not the stock market gambling kind of money where it becomes a political thing that's completely different from the true laws of economics. The true laws of economics, as outlined by these sources, have to do with love and giving and receiving. And that is a universal law. That has to do with the way the universe works, the way that giving cast your bread upon the waters. In many days it does return to you. You get this cycle going where the entire universe works more constructively the more you lovingly express your gratitude and give with your actions in truth, and with your money, if it's given in this way, in this spirit, the same way you really spend money on something you really want and really appreciate. So, it's not just somebody saying, please give us money, just because they want money and it's the same old. No. Encouraging you to tithe is all about this whole idea of giving so that you begin to participate in this process, this ever-increasing spiral of increasing fruitfulness of the love of God. It manifests and flourishes more and more the more everyone gives. The more everyone gives, the more there is for everyone. It's that kind of a thing. So, when it comes to money, tithing is important. If you've got a given income, let's say you take in $1,000 a month, it's important to take the first fruits, so if your $1,000 a month is in the form of fruit, if you're a farmer or something, to take the best ones, and give those. That was the whole idea, the first fruits, where you take the best, the stuff that's actually worth more. So the way I translate that is, if it's just in terms of money, if I have 10 sheep and I give the really good sheep, well, that sheep would be worth more than $100 if the sheep were worth $1,000 overall. That one probably would be worth $150, and the other ones were worth. So I just interpret this. I just reduce it down to being 11%. Maybe to you that's 15%, but whatever. Something a little more than 10% is what I think of it as being the first fruits. So that it's a little bit above and beyond. So that's the way I interpret it, and these sources, they clearly say, give 10%. And if your income is in other ways, I think it's important for time. Give 10% of your time, that type of thing. But when it comes to money as well, don't just give it to me. Heck, I don't know. At this point, I probably wouldn't even be able to channel it the best and get it to the best effect. But there are people that are really working, like the Paul Solomon Foundation, really working at getting those readings out. So by all means, that would be a good place to put it. Or this Douglas Cottrell or others. Anything that you can imagine where there's a need for money and it can be put to good use. It could be an orphanage. It could be a legitimate charity. And I don't know. You got like the Christian Children's Fund. That I think there are a lot of organizations out there that they're really just trying to milk people out of money, and a lot or most of that money doesn't get to where you're intending to give it. So be responsible. Truly try to find out who will use this money correctly and use it effectively. And a lot of times it's the people that are not badgering people for money, the people that need it the most. And think of your mission or orphanage or those kinds of things. They don't usually have advertisements all over the place, all over television, where they're squeezing people for money, but they're probably some of the ones that could benefit from it the most. So when you give, I think, it's not that you give it to a specific person or entity, it's that you find whatever you think is important to you, that you think is important to the world, an important benefit to the world that can be achieved by you giving to that cause. So try to find an area where you think it's really important, where they really could use the benefit, and you're showing your love. You're grateful for that. Wow, I'm over an hour. I can't believe it. I finally went over an hour on one of these. Anyway, so that's the idea with giving. So Paul Solomon Foundation definitely needs it. I'm sure there's lots of other causes that definitely need it. Try to be responsible. And if you're not in the habit of giving 10%, give 10%. If you're independently wealthy and you can give lots more than that, then sure, do the Bill Gates thing. Give a lot more. But whatever, at least do that. Rearrange your budget, eat ramen for a week, fast for a week out of every month. Whatever you have to do just to be able to set aside that 10% and give it to a decent cause. Because the whole idea is it will start to come back. And I don't know. At some point we'll have a whole address on that as well. So sorry for going a little bit over. I've been trying to keep this at exactly an hour, but I'm not a machine. So next time, not sure exactly what the topic will be, but boy, great things are afoot. We're already discovering new channels, new sources of information, and lots of good things to come, I'm sure. So carry on, share and enjoy.